the mission of My Future Business, which if you look under the My Future Business logo, it's helpful people helping people. And from day one, my mission has always been to help reduce the failure rate of small businesses globally. And podcasting, to me, I think as long as that need for communication exists, I think there's going to be a place for podcast marketing.
Ever wondered why so many small and medium-sized businesses fail when they could be thriving? My guest today, Rick Nuske, tackles this issue head on. Author of the new book, Welcome to the Show 1.0, the complete podcasting system for your business, Rick unveils the ultimate conversion-focused podcasting system for business growth. With over a decade of real-world experience and a passion for empowering entrepreneurs, Rick is here to change the way you think about business survival and success. Rick, welcome to the show.
Absolute pleasure being here. Thank you so very much, Mike, for having me.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I was on your show recently.
Yes.
You're out of Australia, correct?
I am. I'm in a place called McLaren Vale in South Australia. It's a wine region. It's fairly well known for its wines, in fact, and I try to stay away from them as much as possible.
A little hard.
A little hard occasionally, yeah. So, that's where we've been for the last 25 years. So time ticks by fairly quickly when you don't think about it, doesn't it?
For sure. Even when you think about it, it goes by quickly. So, well, listen, I do appreciate it. I know it's late evening your time, and I do appreciate the flexibility. I wanted to return the favor, and I love your book. I went through it.
Thank you.
I haven't read it cover to cover, but I've gone through it just because I was very intrigued by your approach. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. But Rick, I'd love to hear more about who you are, your business, and the customers and clients you serve.
Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity. My name's Rick Nuske, and I'm a former national manager, and I used to work across various industry sectors. I'm mainly exposed to the oil and gas sectors. At that time, my focus was in human resources, safety and design, and quality management. And at last count, nearing a decade now or so, I've been the host of a business building podcast called the My Future Business Show. And we've seen quite a bit of success, and I'm really loving it. Really, the show is all about getting business owners and book authors in front of their best audiences and keeping them there. And that's no mean feat, considering, at the start, the mission wasn't that well defined. So we've had to work at it, but we are getting there.
So I don't want to gloss over that too quickly, Rick. Over 10 years, you've been an active podcast show host.
That's correct? Yep.
Yeah.
And this all started because I remember I was on a red-eye flight some time ago now, obviously, and my son had just been born, and I was on a red-eye flight just about to taxi out of the airport, and I was in tears, Mike, because I could see my baby boy and my wife, and here I was jetting away for work, and I was feeling really crushed by it. But I'm a business person through and through. That's what I do. I loved it, but I also wanted to be there and present for my kids. And I was on the phone to Jemima, my wife, just crying, saying, look, I don't know what to do. And if it wasn't for my better half, my wonderful wife, Jemima, I don't think it would have rolled out as it did, because she gave me the freedom, the flexibility to pursue my dreams. And I think that's a major part of why I'm here today.
That's awesome. And, in the world of podcasting, to be around that long, I'm sure your episode count must be, I would assume, in the thousands at this point. It's a very impressive thing to stay that course. I was a guest on your show recently.
Yes.
I loved, what really astounded me, Rick, besides the interview, which was fun, it was perhaps one of the most, if not the top 3 most unique interviews I have been on. And I've been on a ton of podcasts as a guest. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you did that I found extraordinary, again, from a guest perspective, was your turnaround time. Because I remember we finished the interview, and typically hosts are like, well, this will be out in 3, 4, 6 months. And I said, oh, so when can we expect to help promote this? He was like, oh, it'll be out tomorrow. It was like tomorrow or the next day.
Oh, look, this is all about, it really is to me about customer focus and making sure that, the experience is a memorable one. And I think that's part of the formula, to be quite frank.
Right. And I think the third part of it was kind of cool. So anyone who might be a suitable guest for you, I'm definitely, plugging Rick's show, but you create some very interesting collateral around the show, a workbook, et cetera,
Hmm.
which again, I thought was very neat. So congratulations again. Thank you for the opportunity. So I hope I can pay it back. So Rick, as you know, this is the author factor. So we focus our conversation on why business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders decide to write a book, whether it's the first book, like your case,
Hmm.
or we've had guests that have had 15, 20 books. So it's always about that story and then hopefully motivating a listener, at least one listener, by your story, your journey, what you've learned to go and create their own book and make their own impact in the world. So I love podcasting. I was, again, picking your brain when we were talking last about the
Yep,
way you do things. You decided tell me why you decided to write this book, which is your first book, right? I didn't
that's
overstate
correct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, look,
Congratulations.
initially, I got caught up in the marketing world, and I've always been involved in direct response marketing, and the Dan Kennedys of the world, and the likes. And I read all of his No BS series, and I just was just so engrossed in the content, and I thought, how wonderful would it be? How smart would you have to be to actually write a book of this caliber? And it stuck with me for the longest time. And I just wanted to put it into my bucket list initially, just to write a book above and beyond everything else. But I think it was a natural progression after years of trial and much error along the way, starting my own podcast and turning it actually into a business of my
Mhm.
own. And I thought, there's something here that I need to share because I don't know that anybody's doing it the way I'm doing it. And that is part of the reason that I, put pen to paper. And a year and a half later, here we are talking about a book. Um, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. That's for sure and certain. But it really is a complete end-to-end system. You hear this all the time. It's almost cliche. It is an end-to-end system based on my own experiences, and it uses a three-step model. And within each three-step, it has a corresponding three sections and three actions. So it's very structured in this respect. I don't know that you need to follow it from step 1 to step 9. You can certainly follow it in sequence, but after you've gone over it, you can certainly go back and, I guess, get more information by reading each section again. Yeah, and really, it comes back to the mission of My Future Business, which if you look under the My Future Business logo, it's helpful people helping people. And from day one, my mission has always been to help reduce the failure rate of small businesses globally. And podcasting, to me, I think crosses all boundaries. And frankly, Mike, if there's a need for communication around the world, as long as that need for communication exists, I think there's going to be a place for podcast marketing well into the future. I think it's far better, far more established than just being a fad.
For sure. Rick, before we go a little deeper into your book, I'd like to just visit your podcast because I
Hmm.
want to, there's probably some hosts and guests listening to this. The frequency of your episodes. I'm just going to ask some real quick questions just to frame so people get a better idea of your show.
Yep.
What's the frequency of
I
episodes?
would say it's variable. Sometimes I'm upwards of 5, maybe 6 a week. Other times it's 3. I do put a tentative ceiling on that simply because I need to give myself some free time. So I set that boundary at around 5 a week. Like yourself, I might push myself occasionally. Other times I might take a week off. So yeah, it's variable, but it's fairly consistent to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. And the focus, if you could just kind of sum up the focus, is there one overall guiding, principle or idea that you share
Yep.
across your episodes?
Absolutely. Well, it's about it's for business owners and book authors, and it's about getting them in front of their best audience and keeping them there. Now, I think with the show, it also creates some assets that my guests get to take with them in the form of MP3s, MP4s, so that they can walk away with a product rather than just an interview on somebody else's show, which I think is valuable. And I've been getting a lot of great feedback. If you have a look at the testimonials page. We're in the hundreds of people providing feedback, and I value that so much.
And then here's the piece that I was, pretty amazed with, because again, being a host, being a guest, I've seen a lot over the last 4 years. And I don't want to misspeak, but you charge your guests to be on your show, right? It's a fee because of all the work that you're doing, all the promotion you're doing, right? There is a fee to appear on your show.
That is correct, and that polarizes people. That be sure and certain about that. And I'm actually fine with that, because if you don't polarize your audience, you don't know who your target market actually is. They reveal themselves, they come forward. And I think this is where social proof and evidence and actually having some base sets of skills and the ability to bring the best out in people and be able to prove that can justify it beyond the time that we spend, the technology that's needed to run it, the subscriptions that people never see or hear about in the background that we're having to sort of address each and every month. So for me to keep you in front of get you in front of your best audience and keep you there, we needed to fund it. It was never a money-making thing. It was a stay afloat thing, keep the doors open thing. And now with, obviously in the last couple of years, the private consulting part of the business, it's really working quite well at keeping us afloat. And then the main core of the business is consulting, which I don't really promote all that much because I don't need to. So yeah, that model seems to be working, and I think it also attracts a different caliber. I'm not going to say better. I'd say a different caliber of guests who value their time. No-show rates are very, very low, and prior to this, there was a time when it was free mic, and the no-show numbers were exceptionally bad, and it kind of annoyed me a bit. And I thought, I've had enough of this. You put your time to the side and you wait, and people don't rock up. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And this was just one part of the catalyst for starting to put a fee in place.
Yeah. Well, it's something, and I don't want to go too far off, but
No, that's fine.
I'd love to maybe in the future even have a conversation, because I do think I don't charge to be on my show. I did implement a process where if an agency is looking to book a guest, there's podcasting agencies, I will put a fee in front of them because they're making money.
Yep.
But the interesting thing with podcast hosting, while I love sharing the information, we know you make an impact, it is a bit different. There's a lot of time, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of work that's involved. And, I've been in the consulting gig since 1998. It's like, you pretty much charge for everything. Like if there's time involved, you're charging for that in some capacity, whether it's a product or service. But in the podcasting world, it tends to be different. So when I saw your model, I think it's very intriguing. I think it's more than justified if you have a good quality show and you're doing all the stuff that you're doing, Rick. But this is that. I mean, I'm sure you're not saying every podcast host should be charging. You got to work up to it, et cetera. But that is a part of your podcast, for a business system, correct?
That is the entire model, excluding the consulting component that, again, I don't talk about too much. But that is the model. And for all the reasons we've just talked about, Mike, is the reason that we do it. And, again, different caliber of guests. It's upwards of 6 hours per episode. They walk away with a product in MP3, MP4 format. They are also put in front of our existing audience, which is quite significant and active, which is important. And beyond all of that, if you compare it with something like pay-per-click marketing, you don't necessarily get any results at all. You're paying a hell of a lot more for it, but people are willing to throw hundreds of dollars at Facebook marketing, as an example, and not think twice about the fact that they've just burned $100 and they walk away with nothing. So I think the value proposition is alive and well. At least maybe it's a biased opinion.
No, listen, I agree. So if in the future I start charging guests, it's Rick Nuske's fault.
Well, you'd be justified.
Well, the other thing, and again, I'm just going to use you as an example because I know in your book and on your website, it's all there, but it's not just a single fee. There's different opportunities, which I found very, interesting too. So very nice job with that. So let's go back to your book.
Yep.
who's it written for? Who, our listeners right now, who should go buy a copy and read that? And what's the big reason? What's the big thing they're going to get by reading your book, Rick?
Well, if you look at the term small business, I use that term loosely, but in between a small and medium-sized business owners, and I would suggest even large-sized corporations could get benefit out of making podcast marketing an integral part of their promotional strategy, so much so that it's indispensable. Because again, coming back to this need for communication amongst human beings, as long as that exists, there'll always be a need for podcasting because that's communication in its purest form. Just like you and I now, we're having a conversation. But the second part of the audience, which I only recognized over years of interviewing different people, is that it's basically business owners, small business owners, and book authors. And the reason they should buy the book, in fact, it's not about buying the book because I'm giving the book away. The reason they should get themselves a copy of the book, which they can at the end of this call, hopefully, Mike, if that's okay, is to give them a complete end-to-end system for somebody who has never, ever experienced podcasting before in terms of it becoming a proven promotional strategy that they can start using with a minimum outlay, and just with a bit of practice and a bit of time, they will start to build up a content strategy that I have proven is effective. Anybody who has done podcasting as a host for any length of time and got any sort of traction out of it can recognize, I guess, the value in content, because we live in an age where content is king, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's focus on the book a bit more, Rick. So we're recording this late August 2023. How old is the book? When did you publish it?
I'm guessing late 21, early 22, I'd like to say.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a year or two. So since you've had it out there, I'd love to hear, because you're a marketer, what has been the number one way for you to get the book out there and make it known to your audience?
Well, I always, it's policy basically that everybody I interact with gets a copy of the book, free of charge, because it's a great conversation starter. You'd know more than most that how powerful books are to get a conversation started. Hey, I read that page, and this is what I was thinking. I never used to know that. Those sorts of conversation, reply emails, turn into, hey, look, you've got 5 minutes to have a call with me, and then that turns into something else later on down the track. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing people come onto my email list, and I'm not trying to actively market to build an email list, but if you put it in front of them, and there's a basic capture page, people download it. And I think free is alive and well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely not going anywhere. And as long as if it's good quality content, like a book, and in your case, a very well written book, even more so. So you mentioned earlier on, Rick, that it was a little harder than you expected.
Yes, sir.
So if somebody's listening to this right now and they are either working on their first book, or they know they have a book they want to share with the world, but they haven't, what bit of advice? Is there something you did with that first book that made it harder that you wouldn't do the next time? Or is there something that you learned during the process you would just want to share with that listener?
Well, when I first started writing, I'm not a writer. I pretend that I am now because I've finally got to the promised land of published authors. But it wasn't always that way. I started off with notepads, scribbling ideas, formulating processes based on what I knew of quality management and systems, and piecing together what I'd done well in a previous interview, and all of those sorts of things. Just over time, the amalgamation and all of that ended up in this pile of data on paper that I had to then word process and start to sort. And this was prior to AI. This was the real deal. This was grinding it out. You know what I mean? It wasn't artificially written. It was written by a human for humans, and it was painful for me. But what I would say is that I did find a lot of satisfaction knowing that I'd done say 250 words a day, and then going away for a couple of days and just letting those thoughts just percolate. Usually in the shower, I go, oh, wow, I've got this great idea. I've got to put it down. So I would. And my audio notepad on my phone became a really great asset because I just spoke a lot of what I wanted to put into the book. So it was definitely an iterative process, and I got involved in a book writers group, and I signed up for this distribution company that does the book distribution, and I learned a bit from there and a little bit from over here. So it was pretty messy, I have to say, Mike, the whole journey.
Well, it got done though, right? That's the key thing. You got it done. You set a goal. I mean, a lot of what you're sharing sounds a lot like me, Rick. So I get that.
Yep.
But I think it's just indicative of there's no one way to get a business book done. Some people have a very linear, I'm just going to get it done and chug it out. Other people, it takes years. But I think that the key takeaway is, it can be done. If you help people like you do with your business and your podcast, it should be done. So Rick, relatively new author, a year or so, first book. I'm not going to ask if there's going to be another one, but my guesses are probably there will probably be another one in the future.
Yes,
you get bit by that bug. There is. There you go.
It's underway. It's hidden behind the green screen behind us.
Very good. Are you allowed to share any tidbit with it or not?
Oh, well, look, it's. I think there's one side of the equation, which are the hosts, and then there's the guests, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to help guests get the most out of their interviews because, it's nerve-wracking. It can be exhilarating. It could be, it's not defined very well what they want the outcomes to be. So that's really sort of where I'm aiming at with the next book.
As I was sitting here and listening to you earlier on, I was like, oh, he's got to have a second book and it's got to be guest focused because guesting is a business strategy.
Yep.
There's two sides of that coin.
So,
absolutely. Rick, now that you're part of the Authors Club, as you suggested, I'd love to hear your perspective on what it has meant for Rick Nuske to be a published book author. What has it meant to you? What has it meant to your business? What has it meant to your followers to be finally be that book author?
Well, look, my first reaction when you asked the question was my chest sort of released just the pressure every time I think about that moment that it was the end of it and people were reading it and they were starting to give me feedback and I was being congratulated. So many different people from CIA agents through to doctors were saying, this is amazing. This is a really, really good book. I'm getting that sort of feedback and I actually found it to be a very emotional experience, to be quite honest with you. And, it's a feeling that I'd welcome again. That's for sure.
Well, very good. Well, I'm sure you're going to have it again when we see that next book come out. So, Rick, I do appreciate your time. Can you share with our listeners, the best place to learn about you, get your book, see your, listen to your podcast?
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to get some more information about me and My Future Business, which is the name of my business, go to myfuturebusiness.com and you'll find a plethora of information. There's a number of different menus that you can sort through and have a look. And that's just one way that you can contact me. And also, if you want to get your hands on a copy of the book, I've made a address available to you. It's simply myfuturebusiness.com/thank you. Thank you being one word, no spaces.
All right. And if they want to appear on your show, they can learn about it right on the website there?
Absolutely. There's a booking page and it's really breaks down all of the details. I've been meticulous in my focus to make sure and certain that there is no stone left unturned, because a confused mind is a mind that doesn't make a decision. So please, if you go there and you want to learn more and you still have a question, there's a contact page. If you reach out to us, either Christy, my offsider, or myself will be back with you with an answer to your question within 24 hours, usually a lot less than that.
Very good. Well, Rick, again, congratulations on that first book. Congratulations on your show's success. And thank you for your time today.
Excellent. And thank you, Mike. It's been a wonderful opportunity to join you on your show.